Ladies and gentlemen, life is suffering. That's the harsh reality. But within that suffering lies an opportunity to transcend, to grow, to become something more than you were yesterday. And how do you do that? You find something difficult to do. Not something trivial, not something convenient, but something that challenges you, something that forces you to push against the limits of your own inadequacy. Because here's the truth: meaning isn't found in comfort. It's not into doing what's easy. It's found at the edge of your capabilities, in the struggle, in the uphill battle against chaos and incompetence, especially your own. And if you avoid that, if you refuse to take on that burden, then life will punish you for it. You don't get to choose whether or not you suffer. You only get to choose whether that suffering is meaningful. So I urge you, take responsibility. Pick up something heavy. Face the unknown. Find something difficult to do. And then do it, not because it's easy, but because through that effort you will become more than you ever thought possible. Life is not designed to be easy. From the moment we are born, we are faced with challenges, limitations, and obstacles that test us at every turn. But within these challenges lies something profoundly valuable. Meaning is not something handed to us, nor is it something we stumble upon in moments of comfort. It is something we earn, something we forge through effort, suffering, and sacrifice. The very structure of existence is built on the idea that struggle is necessary for growth, and growth is what gives life its purpose. People often believe that happiness is the goal of life, that the ideal state of being is one where there is no hardship, no suffering, no difficulty. But this is a misunderstanding of human nature. Happiness is not something that can be pursued directly. It is a byproduct of engaging in something deeply meaningful. And meaning is only found when we voluntarily take on challenges that push us to our limits. The very act of overcoming obstacles gives us a sense of purpose, a reason to continue moving forward despite the inevitable suffering that life brings. When people seek only comfort, they become weak. A life free of struggle does not produce strength. It produces fragility. If we shield ourselves from difficulty, from pain, from the very things that force us to adapt and improve, we stagnate. We become incapable of dealing with the real world, where hardship is not optional. And when hardship inevitably arrives, as it always does, we are unprepared. We crumble under the weight of even the smallest challenges because we have not developed the resilience necessary to withstand them. This is why the pursuit of meaning is superior to the pursuit of happiness. If you make happiness your primary goal, you will find yourself empty and directionless. You will chase momentary pleasures, distractions, and comforts, but none of them will truly satisfy you. You will feel as though something is missing, as though life lacks a deeper sense of fulfillment. That is because happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes, influenced by external circumstances beyond our control. But meaning is different. Meaning is not about fleeting emotions. It is about the long-term impact of our actions, the sense that we are working towards something greater than ourselves. The only way to find meaning is to engage in struggle willingly, to seek out challenges that are difficult enough to demand real effort, real sacrifice. When we do this, we become stronger, more capable, more resilient. We learn that we are capable of far more than we ever imagined, that the limits we believed defined us were illusions. Through this process, we transform ourselves into something greater. The people who accomplish great things in life do not do so because they avoided struggle. They do so because they embraced it. They sought out the hardest tasks, the most challenging problems, the responsibilities that no one else wanted to bear. And in doing so, they carved out a path of meaning and significance. They became the kind of people others admire, not because they were free of suffering, but because they confronted it head on and emerged stronger. Many people avoid difficulty because they fear failure. They believe that if they take on something too hard, they will not succeed, and that failure will be proof of their inadequacy. But failure is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced. Every failure is a lesson, an opportunity to learn, to improve, to refine one's approach. The only true failure is refusing to try at all. If you never challenge yourself, you never grow. And if you never grow, there is an old saying, a ship is safest in the harbor, but that is not what ships are built for. People, too, are not built for ease and comfort. We are built for challenge. We are built to struggle, to strive to overcome. It is in our nature to push against resistance, to test our limits, to see how far we can go. And when we do, we discover that meaning is not something external that we must search for. It is something that emerges from within us when we rise to meet the challenges life presents. Comfort is seductive. Later promises safety, ease, and a life without suffering. But it is an illusion. A life spent avoiding difficulty is a life wasted. The greatest stories ever told, the greatest achievements in history all share one thing in common. They are built on struggle. The hero is not the one who sits idly by, waiting for things to improve. The hero is the one who stands up, takes on responsibility, and fights to make things better. Avoiding difficulty is not a path to peace. It is a path to a deeper kind of suffering. When people refuse to confront challenges, they do not escape hardship. They only postpone it, and often in a way that makes it worse. Life does not allow anyone to remain stagnant for long. If you do not take responsibility for pushing yourself forward, life will push you in ways you do not expect, and that push is almost always more painful than the voluntary struggle of self-improvement. The idea that one can simply avoid difficulty and remain content is a fantasy. The world does not operate on the principle of ease. It is built on struggle, competition, adaptation, and resilience. Every living thing that survives and thrives does so because it confronts challenges head on, not because it hides from them. This is true at every level of existence. A body that is not exercised grows weak. A mind that is not challenged grows dull. A person who refuses to take on responsibility becomes resentful and bitter. The avoidance of difficulty does not lead to happiness. It leads to suffering without meaning. People often deceive themselves into thinking that if they avoid the hard things in life, they will be free to live without stress, without worry, without struggle. But this is not how life works. Difficulty is not something you get to opt out of. It is something you must face, one way or another. The difference is whether you face it voluntarily on your own terms or whether you allow it to creep up on you unexpectedly and overwhelm you. Those who refuse to engage in difficult tasks do not avoid pain. They experience it in a different form. They suffer from aimlessness, from a lack of self-respect, from the anxiety that comes with knowing deep down that they are not fulfilling their potential. When people choose to avoid difficulty, they often turn to distraction as a way to numb the discomfort of stagnation. They bury themselves in entertainment, in short-term pleasures, in anything that allows them to forget, even for a moment, that they are not moving forward. But this strategy never works for long. The mind cannot be tricked indefinitely. A person who avoids difficulty knows on some level that they are failing themselves. They know that they are capable of more, and that knowledge creates a quiet suffering, a lingering dissatisfaction that no amount of distraction can erase. Difficulty is not the enemy. It is the way forward. Those who embrace it, who willingly take on challenges, who seek out the hard path instead of the easy one, become stronger as a result. They develop confidence because they prove to themselves that they are capable. They build resilience because they endure failure and keep going. They cultivate a sense of purpose because they engage in tasks that demand their full attention and effort. These people do not experience less suffering than those who avoid difficulty. In fact, they often endure more, but their suffering has meaning, and meaning transforms hardship into something valuable. The cost of avoiding difficulty is not immediate, which is why so many people fall into the trap of taking the easy route. The consequences of avoidance build slowly, over time. At first, it seems like nothing is wrong. Life feels comfortable, manageable. But as the years go by, the weight of inaction accumulates, opportunities slip away. Skills that could have been developed remain undeveloped. Potential is wasted. Regret begins to set in. And at some point, the realization comes, usually too late, that the easy path was never truly easy. It was simply a slow descent into dissatisfaction and despair. People who take on difficulty willingly, on the other hand, often experience the opposite trajectory. Their lives may seem harder in the beginning. They struggle more, they fail more, they endure more setbacks. But each of these struggles makes them better. Each challenge they face and overcome adds to their strength. Over time, they become more competent, more capable, more confident. They develop skills that open doors. They build relationships based on mutual respect. They create lives that are rich with meaning because they have chosen to engage fully with the world rather than hide from it. The difference between a fulfilling life and a life of quiet misery is not the absence of suffering. It is whether that suffering is voluntary or imposed. Those who avoid difficulty suffer just as much as those who embrace it, often more, but their suffering lacks purpose. It is the suffering of regret, of weakness, of lost potential, and nothing is more painful than knowing you could have been more than you are, but chose not to be. Growth is not something that happens by accident. It is the result of deliberate effort, of pushing beyond the limits of what is comfortable and familiar. People are not born competent, strong, or knowledgeable. These qualities must be developed, and the only way to develop them is by engaging with challenges that stretch one's abilities. When you refuse to challenge yourself, you remain the same, stuck at your current level of skill, understanding, and resilience. But when you take on something that demands more from you than you currently have to offer, you are forced to adapt, to improve, to grow. Many people underestimate their potential because they have never truly tested it. They operate within a narrow range of effort, only doing what is necessary to get by. They avoid situations that might expose their weaknesses, fearing failure or discomfort. But without exposure to struggle, they remain trapped by self-imposed limitations, never realizing that the only thing standing between them and a more capable version of themselves is their own unwillingness to engage with difficulty. Taking on challenges does not guarantee success, but it guarantees progress. Even when you fail, you gain something valuable: knowledge, experience, resilience. Every mistake is a lesson, every setback an opportunity to refine your approach. Those who fear failure often miss out on the most important part of growth: learning from struggle. Without struggle, there is no improvement. Without mistakes, there is no mastery. Every expert, every highly skilled individual became that way not by avoiding difficulty, but by embracing it, by putting themselves in situations where they had no choice but to learn and adapt. Growth is uncomfortable. It requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to endure moments of frustration. But that discomfort is a sign that something important is happening. Muscles grow by being torn and repaired, becoming stronger in the process. The mind works in the same way. It strengthens when it is forced to wrestle with complex problems, when it is pushed beyond its current level of understanding. If you never challenge yourself, you remain mentally and physically weak. You never develop the endurance to handle stress, the discipline to pursue long-term goals, or the competence to take on greater responsibilities. Many people wait for motivation before they take on something difficult, but motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes, influenced by mood and circumstance. If you rely on motivation to push yourself, you will only act when you feel like it, which is rarely enough to create meaningful progress. The key is discipline, the ability to do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Discipline is built through repeated exposure to difficulty, by proving to yourself over and over again that you can take on hard tasks even when you do not want to. One of the biggest obstacles to personal growth is the tendency to compare oneself to others. People look at those who are further ahead and feel discouraged, as if they could never reach that level. But growth is not about measuring yourself against others. It is about measuring yourself against who you were yesterday. If you are slightly better today than you were before, you are on the right path. Progress is often slow and difficult to notice in the moment, but over time, consistent effort leads to transformation. Avoiding challenges may feel like self-protection, but it is actually self-sabotage. The more you shield yourself from struggle, the less equipped you become to handle life's inevitable difficulties. People who never push themselves remain fragile, easily overwhelmed by adversity, constantly searching for external solutions to their internal weaknesses. But those who consistently challenge themselves develop inner strength. They become the kind of people who can handle stress, who can take on responsibility, who can navigate uncertainty without falling apart. The mind, like the body, is designed to adapt to the demands placed upon it. If you never challenge yourself, you never activate that process of adaptation. You never develop the skills and resilience necessary to reach your full potential. But if you continually seek out challenges, if you put yourself in situations where you must stretch beyond your current abilities, you will find that you are capable of far more than you ever imagined. Responsibility is not a burden. It is the foundation upon which a meaningful life is built. Many people seek to avoid responsibility, believing that freedom from obligation will bring happiness. They imagine a life where they have no duties, no commitments, no expectations placed upon them. But this is an illusion. A life without responsibility is not a life of freedom. It is a life of aimlessness and despair. People who refuse to take on responsibility often find themselves lost, directionless, unsure of their purpose. They drift through life without a sense of accomplishment or fulfillment because they have not committed themselves to anything of value. Taking on responsibility gives life structure. It provides a framework for growth, for progress, for self-improvement. When you accept responsibility, you give yourself a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to push through difficulties, a reason to strive towards something greater than yourself. The act of carrying a burden, whether it is the responsibility for your own well-being, for your family, for your career, or for a cause you believe in, transforms you. It forces you to become stronger, more competent, more capable. It demands that you rise to meet the challenges that come with it. People often resist responsibility because it requires effort. It is far easier to avoid difficult tasks, to blame others for one's circumstances, to expect someone else to solve the problems that arise in life. But this avoidance does not lead to peace. It leads to resentment, to weakness, to a sense of powerlessness. When you refuse to take responsibility, you place yourself at the mercy of external forces. You become dependent on others to provide for you, to guide you, to make decisions for you. And in doing so, you surrender control over your own life. There is a reason that the most respected and admired individuals are those who take on the heaviest burdens. These are the people who do what others will not. They are the ones who step forward when something difficult needs to be done, who take ownership of their actions, who willingly bear the weight of responsibility even when it is inconvenient or difficult. They do not complain that life is unfair. They recognize that hardship is an inherent part of existence and take it upon themselves to face it with strength and determination. When you accept responsibility, you create meaning. You give yourself something to work towards, something to improve, something that makes your struggles worthwhile. Without responsibility, suffering feels arbitrary and meaningless. But when you tie your suffering to something greater than yourself, when you endure hardship for the sake of your family, your goals, your principles, you transform suffering into purpose. The weight of responsibility is heavy, but it is a weight that strengthens rather than crushes. The path of responsibility is not an easy one. It requires sacrifice. It demands discipline. It forces you to make difficult choices and to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself. But it is also the only path that leads to true fulfillment People who take on responsibility are not free from suffering, but they are free from the kind of suffering that comes from a lack of purpose. They do not spend their lives wondering if they are wasting their potential, because they have committed themselves to something meaningful. It is easy to avoid responsibility in the short term. It is easy to pass blame, to procrastinate, to tell yourself that someone else will handle the difficult tasks. But in doing so, you rob yourself of the opportunity to grow. Every time you avoid responsibility, you reinforce weakness. Every time you take on responsibility, you cultivate strength. The people who achieve the most in life are not the ones who seek to escape difficulty, but the ones who embrace it, who recognize that responsibility is not a restriction, but a path to self-improvement. Carrying responsibility means accepting that you will make mistakes, that you will face setbacks, that you will at times feel overwhelmed. But it also means accepting that you have the power to improve, to learn, to become more than you were before. Those who reject responsibility remain stagnant, waiting for life to happen to them. Those who embrace it take control of their destiny, forging themselves into the kind of people who can handle whatever challenges come their way. Hardship is an unavoidable part of life. No one is exempt from struggle, pain, or adversity. It does not matter how intelligent, talented, or privileged a person is, at some point they will face obstacles that test their resilience. The difference between those who grow stronger and those who collapse under pressure is not the presence or absence of hardship, but how they choose to respond to it. Hardship is not merely something to endure. It is something that shapes and refines a person. It is through difficulty that resilience is built, and resilience is what allows individuals to withstand the unpredictable challenges that life inevitably presents. When people avoid hardship, they become fragile. They fail to develop the mental and emotional strength necessary to navigate life's difficulties. They become overwhelmed by minor inconveniences, paralyzed by fear of failure, and unable to persevere in the face of setbacks. Strength is not something people are born with. It is something they earn through struggle. Just as a muscle must be stressed in order to grow stronger, a person must be exposed to challenges in order to develop resilience. Without resistance, there is no adaptation. Without adversity, there is no growth. There is a common misconception that a comfortable, stress-free life is the ideal. Many people seek to eliminate struggle, to remove all sources of discomfort, to avoid any situation that demands effort or perseverance. But this approach does not lead to happiness. It leads to stagnation. When people do not challenge themselves, they remain weak. They do not develop the skills, the toughness, or the mindset required to handle real problems. And when real problems inevitably arise, they are left unprepared, unable to cope with the weight of responsibility and hardship that they have spent their lives avoiding. Hardship forces a person to confront their own weaknesses. It exposes flaws, insecurities, and limitations. Man, this can be painful, but it is also necessary. Only by recognizing one's shortcomings can one begin the process of overcoming them. Avoiding difficulty does not eliminate weakness. It only allows it to remain hidden until it is exposed in a moment of crisis. Those who actively seek out challenges, who willingly subject themselves to difficulty, develop the ability to handle pressure, to solve problems, to endure discomfort without breaking down. They become the kind of people who can be relied upon, who can take on responsibility, who can lead and inspire others. Resilience is not simply about enduring suffering. It is about using suffering as a tool for transformation. Every obstacle presents an opportunity to grow. Every failure contains a lesson. Every hardship endured without surrender builds a person's ability to take on even greater challenges in the future. Those who develop resilience do not crumble under stress. They adapt. They find ways to move forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. They recognize that the ability to persist in the face of adversity is one of the most valuable qualities a person can have. People who seek an easy life, free of struggle, often find themselves dissatisfied. They may experience temporary comfort, but they lack a sense of accomplishment, of earned confidence. They have never tested themselves, never pushed beyond their perceived limits, never discovered what they are truly capable of. This is why people who voluntarily take on difficult tasks, whether it is physical training, intellectual challenges, or personal sacrifices, often report a greater sense of fulfillment than those who seek to avoid all discomfort. Struggle gives life depth and significance. It provides a sense of progress, of moving towards something meaningful. The process of facing hardship and growing from it is what creates competence. Competence is not an accident. It is the result of repeated exposure to difficulty. A person who has never had to solve problems will not know how to think critically. A person who has never had to endure discomfort will not know how to persist when things become difficult. But a person who has repeatedly faced and overcome obstacles develops an unshakable confidence in their ability to handle whatever comes their way. They become the kind of person who does not shy away from responsibility, who does not crumble under pressure, who does not fear the unknown. Life without struggle is not a life of peace. It is a life of unpreparedness. It is not the absence of hardship that makes a person strong, but the willingness to face it head on. Those who embrace difficulty, who willingly take on challenges, who refuse to back down in the face of adversity, become the kind of people who can handle the unpredictability of life. They develop a resilience that allows them to move forward, no matter how many obstacles stand in their way. The pursuit of meaning is what gives life its depth, its richness, its sense of purpose. People often believe that happiness is the ultimate goal, that if they can just remove discomfort, struggle, and difficulty from their lives, they will be content. But happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes based on circumstance, on luck, on forces beyond one's control. A life built on the pursuit of happiness alone is fragile because the moment hardship strikes, that happiness disappears. Meaning, on the other hand, is something deeper. It is not dependent on fleeting emotions. It is something that endures, something that sustains a person even in times of suffering. Meaning is not something that simply appears. It must be cultivated. It is created through action, through the choices a person makes, through the responsibilities they take on. People who seek meaning rather than just comfort find that even their suffering has value. They understand that hardship, sacrifice, and discipline are necessary in the pursuit of something greater. They recognize that life is not about avoiding pain, but about ensuring that the pain they endure is for a worthwhile cause. Those who embrace this mindset do not crumble under adversity because they understand that struggle is an essential part of a meaningful existence. Many people drift through life without a clear sense of direction. They move from one distraction to another, hoping that something will fill the emptiness they feel. They chase temporary pleasures, but those pleasures never provide lasting satisfaction. This is because pleasure alone does not provide meaning. Meaning is found in challenge, in growth, in the pursuit of something beyond the self. It is found in the responsibilities a person accepts, in the difficulties they choose to face, in the effort they put into becoming something more than they were yesterday. Meaning requires sacrifice. A person who truly wants to live a meaningful life must be willing to give up certain comforts, to endure struggle, to persist through hardship. The most meaningful pursuits are often the most difficult. Whether it is building a career, raising a family, pursuing excellence in a craft, or dedicating oneself to a cause, anything truly worthwhile demands effort. This is why those who avoid difficulty also tend to feel a lack of purpose. They have never committed themselves to something meaningful enough to justify their struggles. People sometimes believe that meaning will reveal itself to them without effort, that one day they will simply wake up and understand their purpose. But meaning is not found. It is created. It is built through daily actions, through the way a person chooses to live. Those who seek meaning must be willing to take on responsibility, to push themselves beyond their comfort zones, to do difficult things even when they do not feel like. They must be willing to suffer for something greater than themselves, to endure setbacks and keep moving forward, to sacrifice short-term gratification for long-term fulfillment. A meaningful life is not necessarily an easy life, but it is a worthwhile one. It is a life where suffering is not pointless, where hardship serves a purpose, where every challenge faced is a step towards something greater. The difference between those who live with purpose and those who feel lost is not that one group avoids suffering while the other does not. It is that one group chooses to suffer for a reason. They choose to bear the weight of responsibility, to engage fully with life rather than retreat from it. They understand that meaning is forged in struggle, in effort, in the willingness to confront challenges rather than shy away from them. Those who cultivate meaning in their lives develop resilience. They do not need to rely on external circumstances to feel fulfilled because their sense of purpose comes from within. They do not seek happiness at the expense of responsibility because they understand that true fulfillment comes not from escaping hardship, but from facing it head on. They recognize that the struggle itself is what gives life its weight, its value, its profound sense of significance. They are not aimless because they have chosen a path, and they are willing to walk it, no matter how difficult it may be. A person who embraces the pursuit of meaning does not avoid difficulty, but seeks it out, knowing that it is through challenge that they will grow. They accept that life is not meant to be easy, that the most rewarding achievements come from perseverance and sacrifice. They understand that the pursuit of meaning is what transforms suffering into something valuable, what gives life its depth, and what ultimately allows them to look back without regret, knowing they chose to live fully rather than exist passively.